Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Roland Garros Day 5 catch up,
The heat takes its toll on Sinner as he's stunned by Cerundolo.
Sabalenka and Gauff ease into round three.
And Serena Williams is set to make her tennis comeback at the Queen's Club.
Chris, today is the 28th of May, and we are here to catch up on Roland Garros Day 5 at Tennis Weekly HQ. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about one of the biggest Grand Slam upsets in recent times. World number one and top seed Jannik Sinner is out at the hands of Juan Manuel Cerundolo. The heat taking its toll on him as he lost in 5 sets from 2 sets up, 5-1 up in the third set. An incredible achievement from Cerundolo. We're going to be unpacking all of that, the match, what it means for the draw, who is now favourite for the men's draw. We're going to be unpacking all of that. Chris was also there. Ben Shelton is also out, leaving the top half of the men's draw completely wide open. We'll be discussing that. Aryna Sabalenka is also through in, once again, less than convincing fashion to join Gauff and Osaka in round three. Moise Kouame's epic run also continues. And away from Paris, we had some big news that Serena Williams is set to make her comeback to the tour at the Queen's Club, including a doubles wildcard with Victoria Mboko. Very interesting story there. We're going to be talking about that in the second half, as well as looking to tomorrow's action with Djokovic Fonseca, the third match on Chatrier in the day session. But Chris, we've got to get straight into it. We can't talk about, I don't want to, we can't talk about fan chat. We can't talk about weather chat. We can't talk about air conditioning chat. We just need to get on and talk about yet the fact that Jannik Sinner is out of Roland Garros. Wow, wow, wow.
I mean, we can say he could have done with your air conditioning unit.
Well, he had a little mini fan on his changeover because you messaged me to say you thought he had the same fan as me.
I think maybe you both got it from a
That's where he
retailer.
was going wrong.
Yeah, a retailer that I won't name but begins with an A and ends in an N. But I mean, it wasn't going to get the job done, was it, when it comes to how hot things were out there? And I mean, what a result. I mean, it sent shockwaves around the grounds. I was on court for the entirety. It was an early
What
start.
was the mood? What was the mood of the stadium like? It was first on. Was it even full? What was the tension and the atmosphere like as the match progressed?
Well, it wasn't full. I think we now know that the slot is obviously the worst slot. It's not just a women's tennis issue at all. Um, in the
The
middle
Iga
seat,
Swiatek slot.
the Iga Swiatek slot. That's how it's known now. Yeah, so it was pretty empty at the start. It did fill up a bit more. Obviously, as the story gets out around the grounds, more and more people come in. I mean, at the media section, I was one of maybe 5 people who turned up for him to walk out, just because, if he's waking up early, Joel, I feel like I should as well. But I mean, the way the audience were completely stunned by it, I think no one could really understand what was happening, and how quickly it happened. I think that's probably the biggest issue, that people couldn't really kind of make sense as to he was still on court, but he couldn't compete. But then it happened when he was 5-1 up. I mean, it was quite unbelievable. And I think for me, not saying that I have kind of the all the wisdom in the
Mm.
world, but there were signs. There were signs that this was going to be a dodgy one for him. I think going into it, we did say the only thing that could beat Yannick Sinner is his body. His body in an Argentine, it turned out, is the things that could do it. And it was clear from the off that his gameplay was different. He was trying to take the ball earlier, a bit like what Iga did yesterday, jumping on the backhand, taking it early. He was even looking to serve volley at times and going really big on
Yeah.
the second serve.
That is when I knew he was in trouble later on in the match because he went to that serve and volley a lot. And you could just
But even
tell he
early
was.
on, I was going to say, like, there were some tactics that made me think he does not want to spend much time out there.
Mm.
And obviously, you don't want to make a long match, but these are not always Yannick Sinner traits. He takes it early, but he doesn't take it that early. And I think that's also where I did message the group and I said, even when he was down, Cerundolo, way before the turnaround happened, I said this could be on because
Mm.
he's struggling. And whatever, Darren Cahill has said, about the fact they didn't mind what they wanted or all of this sort of stuff. If they didn't think it was an issue, he wouldn't have had this slot, I think, and it was an issue. We all thought it was, and we were proven that, unfortunately, that it is an issue. The heat is always going to be a problem
Mm.
for Jannik Sinner, and when it did come on, Joel, I mean, it came on quick. I thought when it was 5-1 that he was just kind of waiting for his service game, thinking, right, I haven't got that much left, but I've got a service game in me. I can serve it out. I'm not going to waste my energy on a return
Mm.
game. And then turns out that he actually couldn't serve at that point. His body had completely gone. So, I mean, that was just, I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
unbelievable to see.
yeah, I mean, it was a painful watch.
He hit a
At
wall, Joel.
times he hit a wall. He hit a wall, and as a result of that, Cerundolo won the last 18 of 20 games. He won the last 18 of 20 games to win 3-6, 2-6, 7-5, 6-1, 6-1. Jannik Sinner is out. It marks the earliest exit by the top seed man at Roland Garros since Andre Agassi in the year 2000. I mean, just before we get on to a couple of flash moments from the match, we're going to be talking about his injuries or his non-injuries, and kind of the treatment that was given to him on the tennis court. But in terms of upsets and grand slams, we were talking about Jannik Sinner as the stone cold favorite, massively overwhelming favorite going into Paris. It's obviously not gone the way a lot of people were expecting. How big of an upset is this result to you in the context of recent Grand Slam tennis?
I think it's one of the biggest we've had,
Mm.
probably almost the biggest since, Rafa, if we're talking Roland Garros, when Rafa got taken out by Soderling, or maybe when Djokovic took out
Yeah.
Rafa. It's that sort of magnitude, I think, because although he hasn't won Roland Garros before, I mean, he's been 1 point away, he has been so dominant coming into this tournament. And I think that's where the nature of how it's happened makes it such a stunning upset, because it was one game away, literally,
Mm.
like defeat from the jaws of victory. It's like something I've never seen. So the stunning nature of it, I think, puts it on a par with some of the biggest upsets. And, when you see the draw sheet, it now says, Juan Manuel Cerundolo is going into the next round.
Mm.
It almost doesn't really feel real, because it was such a different contest than we've seen. I mean, we've seen such a battle between, if we reference some of those other matches, I mean, both players were fit and they were really going for it. This was almost a match of two halves. It was really very strange. Two very uneven matches played in one 5-set non-thriller.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
mean, the drama was thrilling, but it was very hard to watch.
yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be one of these matches. People who love best of five set tennis are going to point at to see this is the beauty of best of five. Because if we had mad best of three men's tennis, Sinner would have been done and dusted, on through to the next round. But the beauty of this format allows these stories to play out, and it does go to the very last. And all credit to Cerundolo, because he made Sinner fight for it. He stuck at his game. He was not distracted by any of the things that happened. And we're going to talk about these now, Chris, because these are some pretty big moments that happened in the match. And perhaps the biggest moment was when that kind of onset of heat rushed over Jannik Sinner. I mean, afterwards he spoke about feeling dizzy, which we'll get on to. He told the umpire as well that he was feeling dehydrated, and this was towards the end of the third set. It was still like looking like we're going to end up with a comfortable Sinner victory, but the umpire came onto
I
the
mean, I
tennis
have to I
court.
have to question that. I don't think it looked comfortable at that point. He was love 40 in a serve. The heat had hit. So it was actually at a point where we were all realizing it was very obvious he was not okay.
Yes.
And he went and almost sat. I thought he was sitting in like the towel bucket. He was resting against the side. And then at that point, at love 40 on his serve, the umpire ran to him, which I've never really seen before, because he wasn't physically injured at that point. It wasn't one of those like the umpire running
Mm.
to Haley Baptiste's aid, ran to him, stopped the clock, and then he was medically assessed. And so what's interesting about this is that he did say at that point, there was the dizziness side of things, and all of these sort of wordings are very similar to what Casper Ruud had going on with him, where he lost vision. It was clear that he was not seeing right. He was dizzy, but it was also clear at that point that he was cramping. The body was also giving up. And so that was what has caused a lot of controversy online because, Joel, we both know if it's cramps, that means a loss of physical condition. You cannot seek medical attention for that. You can have massages at change of ends, but you cannot have a medical timeout. So the reason why Sinner was taken off court so quickly was because you have to basically be assessed because it's an acute medical illness. So that has to be done, and it can be done off court. So that's why that happened. That's why he went off court. It was for a very long time, though, and a very long time in a much cooler environment. And then he continued to play from the exact same point that he was at. So this is where people get into question marks because he then re-entered at the exact same point at Love 40, even though such a big period of time had happened, and he was found to not have an injury and play had been paused for him. He then resumed without a point penalty, a serve penalty, a warning, absolutely nothing. And that's where people are a bit outraged by this because it feels like everything was done by the umpire, by, the medical professionals, obviously, to make sure he's okay, which he was okay to continue. But then the repercussions didn't exist for the fact that he did stop the play for so long and kind of continued to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and it has caused a lot of conversation online. I mean, what's your view on the whole situation with the umpire rushing down, asking Sinner what he wants, Sinner stepping off court? Do you feel like, as the world number one, he maybe got a little bit of a helping hand there? Dare I say, special treatment that if it was any other player, they maybe wouldn't have been afforded the same luxuries?
I do think you have to assess someone at that point for heat stroke. The same thing happened to Casper. Casper's happened on court. They got Sinner off court very, very quickly. I don't necessarily think it was that much more serious than what happened to Casper, but that was the nature of how they chose to treat it, and they got him off almost instantly. I I do think the treatment hasn't been the same when it comes to the rules and continuing the passage of play, because Sinner was taking a very long time between points, even before, it hit hard. Cerundolo was stepping up to the line, and you're supposed to follow, but match the pace of the server. That's how it's supposed to be. And there is a shot clock as well, but that shot clock was starting late and he was going over it, and there were no penalties that came. And I kind of think the same thing sort of happened when Mensik had cramps yesterday, and he lost his first serve twice, also got a warning before that. And Sinner was also doing it on his opponent's serve. And that's actually something you can't do. You do get a point penalty. So I think there should have been some penalties in this match, because I do understand the heat. The heat rule was not in effect. And I think this is where the problem lies, is that it comes down to umpire discretion as to how firm they're going to be. But again, Cerundolo was fit. He was ready to play. He was ready. Sinner wasn't. And there was no repercussions for him. He was given the best chance to get through the match. And I think when we've seen, Alcaraz in a similar situation with Djokovic in a semi-final, that was stress, I think, that was happening to his body. He actually decided, when he found out his options, he said, I'm going to dock a point, dock a game, get some more treatment, see if it gets better, because that's what he understood he had to do. Whereas Sinner had a luxury that not all players on the grounds have had of playing to your own speed.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone with that view. I mean, Jim Courier said this is absolute nonsense. They're bending the rules for the top players. What happened to Sinner was fatigue, not an injury. The clock should have kept running. Tim Henman agreed as well. It's not right for a tennis player to get the benefit of recovering in a room with air conditioning. I think for me, I think absolutely he should have been treated, because no one wants to see the optics of just a physically, ill player or an ill player on the tennis court just continuing on. That's not what should be happening. But I do think there should have been some sort of repercussion, as you mentioned.
Or on court. He should have been treated on court. That's always an option.
He should have been treated on court. But also, I think
not treated. He wasn't treated, assessed. And then,
assessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
But heat illness, I was just going to say, for what Jim Courier is saying, heat illness or heat stroke is classified as an acute medical emergency. So that point doesn't stand. If you are having heat stroke as well as cramps, you are still having heat stroke. So I think that's quite a heavy-handed approach. The air conditioning room, it is an extension of an assessment that doesn't always
Mm.
get offered to players. Like Casper didn't have it, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, I think if he wanted to be assessed, I think he should have lost the game in that moment. I think to have it happen mid-match, mid-flow, I think is very unfair on the opponent. And I think Cerundolo did incredibly well to keep his level of focus and concentration and not let the moment overwhelm
He
him.
was incredible,
To think
incredible.
he had to to think also he had to kind of just wait there at his chair in the heat while Sinner was off court in an presumably in an air conditioned room. The contrast there doesn't feel particularly fair given the length of time. I mean, the length of time is quoted at in total 20 minutes, which for a tennis player that is quite a long time, isn't it?
That is lengthy. And I think on the Cerundolo point, I was so impressed with how he didn't even question what was going on. He didn't let it bother him. He stayed focused.
Mm.
And it's really hard, actually, when you know your opponent is struggling to know how to pitch your ball to them. Like, should you try and move them around a lot? I mean, should you put in drop shots? And some players completely lose it mentally in that moment, but he was rock
Mm.
solid, even when Sinner showed signs of maybe getting a break back in that fifth set. So I think he chose the right course of action, not to question it, to get on with the job. And potentially for him, it's a lucky moment because he was out of the tournament. Had Jannik Sinner potentially started at 11 a.m. on Susan
Mm.
Longland, it would have been a win for
I
him.
mean,
So
it was interesting that Sinner afterwards actually said the reason for the loss wasn't heat. He said today it was hot, but it wasn't like I was dying from the heat. What happened today has nothing to do with that. These things happen, and then he goes on to speak about him not sleeping well last night and waking up this morning and not feeling good. What do you make of the fact that he's not really putting it on like the heat itself? Is that deliberate? Do you feel like he's trying to deflect from something that I feel like we've been talking about for a long time, in terms of a build up to the French Open and it being like the only thing that could defeat Yannick Sinner? Do you feel like he's deliberately deflecting, so he's almost kind of trying to calm the situation himself?
I mean, anyone on court or anyone who watched that match knows the heat got to Jannik Sinner.
Mm.
That is what happened. His body shut down. We've seen a carbon copy with multiple players this week, like Casper Ruud. It's the exact same pattern. You start to see this happen, certain signs, and then you go. And he went. So I don't think this is a case of, having a bad night's sleep because, Joel, I mean, we've had a bad night's sleep, but I don't think that's what happens because you aren't well rested. So I really don't buy that. I think it's damage control. I think his team are very good at doing
Mm.
that. They've done it around
Mm.
the doping situation. They've done it even this
Mm.
morning about scheduling. I don't believe for a second that they weren't involved in a conversation about which slot they'd play in. And I think it makes sense. I mean, if you don't want to give an inch when it comes to press, that does honestly make some sense
Mm.
because if you expose your weaknesses in that way, then you're just giving more ammunition to the press, but also, it's always going to follow you. Everyone will know that you'll have a chance. And one thing I
Um,
will say that is of interest is that his press conference was announced at 4:32 that he would be on at 4:40, and he came in the next minute. So I've never seen that happen in any Grand
mm.
Slam ever that I've been working at, where you would have such short notice beforehand. So it almost was like he didn't really want to get it done, not have the questions
Mm.
answered and not give anyone anything because the man had heat stroke. That's what happened. He cramped. He couldn't handle it in the heat. We've seen it happen before. It's a pattern. So that's just not accurate. And I mean, the question I'll ask you based on that, Joel, would be now we do know definitively that Yannick Sinner has a problem playing in heat. Does this mean it will always be a problem? The French Open doesn't have a heat rule. He was saved by the heat rule in Australia because just when he went in Australia, the the heat stress indicator hit the point where play would be suspended. Is the French Open always going to be tricky? if temperatures hit a high period. And is that the same for Shanghai? We've seen it in other places as well. I mean, is that his biggest enemy, Carlos Alcaraz, or the heat index?
I think the Heat was an enemy already to Jannik Sinner, and I
It's an
think
enemy
it's
of yours as well,
it's
Joel.
yeah, and it's gone up a few temperatures. I do think the French Open, I think now is the most grueling Grand Slam. It doesn't feel like the heat rule is in place or takes effect as frequently as it does at other slams. Like the Australian Open. I think also with the US Open, you add in the humidity factor. I think that adds another complication to things. But I do think with the French Open, particularly this week, and the way, just generally kind of with climate, how it's just getting hotter and hotter, I think it's become a tournament that, you have to be in peak conditioning for.
But what can you
And
do though? That's the question. I think we've seen Andy Murray when he came back from,
winning three
resurf.
sets.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's what
that's
he's
all I
so
would
good
say.
at, right? We don't
Yeah.
often see him go this deep. And I mean, he hasn't won a match, I don't believe, over 4 hours. Is that correct? Or it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bogey for
he's
him in that
still not
respect.
won a match over 4 hours. His 5 set record is now 1-6, lost 12. I do still think that, yeah, best of five. He has the capabilities to win lots of matches in straight sets,
He's won
and
slams without dropping a set.
he's one of the slams without dropping a set. And I think that just magnifies itself for him when he comes to Grand Slams, perhaps more than other opponents. We see Djokovic dropping sets, but he's maybe kind of feeling his way into the tournament. I think there's, for me, a little bit more worry when it comes to Jannik Sinner dropping sets, because the longer matches go on, the more likely he is to fade or not come out as the victor.
I mean, that's also interesting. I watched Novak Djokovic play in the heat of the day, and he got better as that match went on. Obviously, some shade did come on Chatrier, but it was still very hot. And physically, I mean, he's 39, and we always ask the question. He said he ran out of legs. And I think that's very interesting that he's actually doing better in this. And it feels like some people, some players, where you're from, how you're built, it's almost in your system, whether you can play in heat or not. And it will always probably be a problem. There are things that you can do. I think Zizou Berg's had an issue, and now he takes a certain type of salt that he really goes hard on, and it's helped him with cramps and that sort of thing. But it's tricky to actually, overcome this. I think one question I'll ask you, in fairness, if it wasn't just a bad night's sleep, he did mention the schedule. He played a lot of tennis, and this Masters record, had he actually prioritized the Masters and the fact that Rome was at home over Grand Slams, and has that actually caused him to not win this French Open?
I think I think it was a factor. I don't think it was the ultimate factor. I think obviously the heat today was culprit number one, but I certainly think the amount of tennis he has played on the clay, I think maybe he came in over prepared for Paris. Did he really need to play Monte Carlo? Could he have played two of the three Masters events, is what I would say. And I think his team, perhaps they have got the balance on his schedule a little bit wrong, in the sense that he's gone all in for the clay season. He's still sticking by the fact that he's not going to play any sort of grass court lead up event for Wimbledon. We'll have to see.
It's probably the
if
right
that
move,
remains
though,
true.
based on
Do you
what he
think?
said. I
Do you
think it's the right
think?
move to
I
do
think
that.
he should. I think he should. I think he should play a lead up tournament
But I
to
don't
go
think he.
from this to Wimbledon. I think
But for what
without any sort
purpose
of
would it
grass court
be?
prep.
Is it for grass court? Because he can win tennis matches. That's not the problem. He can win three-set tennis matches. It's more being fresh mentally and physically for Wimbledon and the Slam. And we've seen so many players who are champions go in without playing a warm-up event. I think that's where you have to question, are his team managing his schedule in the way for him to peak at the Slams? Because he's 6-2 at Slams this year and 31-1 outside of the Slams. I think 29-0 he hasn't lost at a Masters. So that's not the record you want. That's not the records that put you in the history books. Grand Slams are how your career is assessed. That's the pinnacle of the sport. So he would trade in a heartbeat, those Masters, for the first two slams of the season. And that's where I think the frustration is because if the weather hadn't have been hot, he would have been, hands down the favorite to go all the way. And that's what I think is so crazy about this scenario is he was one game away and then one match away, which probably would have been a night session match. And then he would have been out of the heat. Next week's much cooler. So the margins for these slams are so fine. You think about last year, it was at 1 point. This year, it's one game, essentially. It could almost be from kind of not holding the trophy at the end of the tournament. And again, getting ahead of myself, but it does just put things in perspective. These are such small margins. This game is won and lost by.
Yeah, very much fine margins. I mean, it is completely blown open the top half of the draw.
Who's still in? I've got a physical draw here,
the only
Joel. I'm
seeded
looking at
player
it.
left. The only seeded player left is Francis Tiafoe. Ben Shelton lost today, so he was the highest seed left after Jannik Sinner. He has gone. So we've got Arnaldi, Collignon, Tiafoe, Farrier.
I see a Caboli in the
Comasena,
bottom half of this.
Berrettini, yeah. Cerundolo and Lander Luthe. Lander Luthe is probably running on fumes, had 2 5-set matches.
The Cerundolo brothers are having a great tournament, both through to round 3. Is this going to be a Cerundolo semi-final?
Well, who do you think is now the favourite? Is there a favourite? Are there multiple favourites now? What who are you looking at in the draw? Because ultimately now we're in a situation where if Novak Djokovic does not win Grand Slam 25, we're going to be getting a first-time Grand Slam champion.
I mean, that is actually quite exciting. I think now we've got a different narrative. I think the rivalry works when they're both there. I think it doesn't work when you lose one of them. We talked about that before. I think the narrative for 25, based on what I've seen from Djokovic, I would not count it out. I think you can't count it out. He looked really good in that match. I think it was like Djokovic in some ways evolved some of his movement at a time we didn't think he'd have form. I'm actually going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to say that Zverev might be the champion here just because I watched his matches and he looked really good. And I think the mental question will always be there. So I can't pick him probably to win it. I don't think I can let myself go that far. But if he can keep his head, there's no reason why he couldn't do it now. I think he is the bookies' favourite. Push comes to shove, I'm obviously going for Djokovic. But Joel, have you got a curveball for me? Come on.
It is hard, I think, to go with Zverev based on
still looking
historically.
At this draw, Joel.
Historically, he has just not ever done well when he is the favourite. It's what I'll say, and that pressure is going to ramp up more and more. He goes further in the draw, so that's my little concern on Zverev.
What about Casper? We got Casper in there, Joel.
I'm actually
Are we
thinking
going to get
about
Hodar?
I'm thinking about Hodar. I think he's in a good part of the draw. I think he's playing very well. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's got Alex Mickelson
He's got a great draw for quarterfinals, that's for sure. He would play Zverev, I believe, in that quarterfinal. Potentially.
Yeah, so it's anyone's guess, but I think it's funny that at the start of the tournament, we were hoping and praying that Djokovic was going to be in the opposite half to Sinner. That's where we felt was going to give him the best chance at Grand Slam 25. But actually, ironically, him in Sinner's half probably would have been the best bet because you look at the names left now, Chris, it's looking like a 250 draw to get to a Grand Slam final.
It really is. And we were thinking, please let him be in the other half. And it's quite a different story now, as you've said. I think it's quite extraordinary what's happened here in terms of the draw being broken in this way. And it will actually give us the opportunity.
It's going to break the Sinner Alcaraz duopoly as well on Grand Slam titles. I think their streak was at 9, the last 9.
Two consecutive years.
It's going to be refreshing.
Everything.
Forced refreshment from that perspective.
It is, and it does make you think that we'll find out, who is the best of the next, because this is what's going to happen. This is an opportunity that, especially, I mean, even for Djokovic, we talked about the fact he can't beat them both in a tournament. I don't believe anymore. We talked about the chance of beating one of them. Now he might be able to win a Grand Slam without having to beat either of them. And he's made the semi-finals of all of the slams last year.
Is this the best chance? Is this the best chance I feel like we say this every Grand Slam, but I have to ask it again. Is this the best chance Novak Djokovic is ever going to get at winning Grand Slam 25?
It is the biggest chance and the biggest gift for him that both of these players are not players he'd have to face. I think it's the stars have aligned, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You know, he is in the best possible position. Physically, there are some question marks, but Joel, it's going to be a very different podcast on the dailies. We'll have one half where we're like, oh, everyone's playing, and I think it will be good to introduce us to new players. And we met a new player, a very exciting new player from France today, didn't we? Announcing himself on the global stage.
I mean, Moise Kouame from France is continuing his incredible run. He's now the youngest man to reach the third round of a major since Rafael Nadal. So pretty good company there. And he had an absolute roller coaster against Vallejo earlier today. He was 5-2 down in the final set. And he was leading Vallejo by 2-0 as well. Got it done in the fifth and deciding set. So incredible. But something I didn't realize, Chris, was because of his age, he's not actually going to be able to collect all his prize money at the end of the event due to French laws. What's that about?
What? This is not fair. He's earned that money, Joel.
I feel like we get into a lot of situations at Grand Slams. You know, amateurs playing from collegiate tennis in America, they're not allowed their money. Youngsters in France, they're not allowed their money either. Just let them have their prize money.
Does it go to the FFT, or
he has to wait for it?
Oh, he does get it eventually. That's key information.
Okay, I believe he does get it once he turns 18 years old.
Not too long to wait then.
Next year, yeah. You collect the interest in the meantime.
What a result. And, you know, even if he doesn't get too much further in the tournament, I mean, Kim had it for the quarterfinals. He will then have something to look forward to, monetary down the line, that he can treat himself with. But, I mean, unbelievable fight. First time he's ever played more than 3 sets, and he wins in a final set tiebreak. I mean, that is mind-blowing. Some players have never done that and will never do that. And he's done it on the first time of asking at his home slam.
Yep. It's going to be fascinating to see. Maybe it's the Lois Boisson story coming out on the men's side.
I guess that's also a bit of a curse now, Joel, isn't it?
It's the Lois Boisson of the men's draw. I don't know. We will see. But we're going to take a quick break now. Do join us in the second half, where we were discussing the women's action from day 5 at Roland Garros, including Naomi Osaka donning another eye-catching outfit, as well as Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka easing through. Plus, we look ahead to tomorrow's action with a mouth-watering encounter between Novak Djokovic and Joao Fonseca. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, and it's time usually to look back on the play today from Roland Garros, but actually we've got some pretty big news to talk about, Chris, away from Paris, and that is Serena Williams is set to play the 2026 Queen's Club Championships. And just generally the grass court season. She's allegedly looking to play Queens, Berlin and Wimbledon, is asking for wildcards as we speak. I think we have agreed this is her comeback is one of the worst kept secrets in tennis, but it's exciting to hear the timing, I think, for Serena Williams choosing Queens with an eye on obviously Wimbledon. But what do you make of this news? And as I said, the timing of it with the grass court season?
I mean, even when I read the story, and again, it's not fully confirmed, but the sources, I mean, it's almost coming from, the horse's mouth when it comes to these wild cards being talked about. I mean, the people who they've been requested to seem to have been talking. I still can't believe these headlines from the perspective of, I don't really believe she's coming back until I see it. But everything on paper has said she is coming back, because why would you submit yourself to 6 months of doping testing to not play, or not to give yourself the chance to play? So there was always a question as to whether she would feel she was at match fitness and able to take to the court. We still don't know that. But I mean, I'm hugely excited by this. I'm not necessarily a fan of the places she's choosing to play. I would start somewhere further away from the chaos, somewhere where you're able to get your level up, and then maybe go to, another tournament. But Berlin is always one of the most stacked of all of the grass court tournaments. It has more top 10, top 20 seeds than any other tournament of that level. Queens is also pretty stacked. So it's kind of going straight in the deep end. And I'm not saying she can't do it,
Is
but
is that a worry? Is that a worry there, even for someone like Serena Williams? I mean, she's 44 years old. Um, is the way that she's coming back, going straight into like a 500, is that as you mentioned, is that a cause for concern, perhaps?
I think the last time she did it, she completely mucked it up. I think she wasn't fit enough when she played Eastbourne. I think she thought that she'd be able to play herself
Mm.
into some kind of form, and she wasn't really able to. She had to rely on all the skill and talent she had, but she wasn't match fit. If she is match fit, she's been hitting with pros. And again, another not great kept secret. Alicia Parks was talking about hitting her, posted the stuff to the social
Mm.
media. Pros have been hitting with her, and they say she's playing great. So it makes me think that she must be very confident if you choose this lineup, which is giving me confidence in it. But if
Mhm.
I, well, not knowing how she's playing, I would probably have looked at maybe like a Nottingham or like something a rung below potentially.
Mhm.
Um, but again, if she is feeling that confident, this could be an all-star comeback.
Yeah.
It really could be. And I think it's going to have to be. Oh, time will tell, Joe. I'm so
Yeah.
excited though. I
I
mean,
mean, one
it's
other
like a
one. Yeah, I mean, one final question I will say, I'm all for seeing Serena Williams back on a tennis court, and she's going to be back on the singles and doubles court. It sounds like she wants to basically play as much tennis as possible, but the opposite to what Jannik Sinner's doing for the grass court season.
Well, should she have played on the
Singles,
clay though? Then I feel like she. I feel like it didn't work last time.
okay.
Such a short lead in.
Well, we've got singles and doubles. Allegedly, she's going to pair up with Mboko at Queens in the doubles. Have you got no issues with her going all in on singles and doubles to get the practice in? Do
Well,
you think
she,
that's?
she should. She should do both. I think she should do both because
Mhm.
at least enter herself in doesn't mean you have to play both to the end. I'm not sure that she can guarantee she's going to get wins, but I mean, this is kind of crazy when you think about it.
I guess
I
she's going competitive with someone like Mboko. It's not like Venus Williams, let's say, and maybe the bit more of a sentimental route, perhaps for perhaps for your comeback. She's going in,
what do you,
wanting victories. It feels
she
like.
she a young gun who can run around. She's 44, and Boko is
Yeah.
a spring chicken. Help her out. So I think, I mean, again, we thought this was happening. We're finding out more information. It's very, very exciting. She didn't make it to the French Open, though. We were wondering where she might return. Grass is looking likely, maybe the US Open afterwards, but we're not on the grass yet, are we, Joel?
No, I mean we do have the women's action. I mean it was slightly less dramatic on the women's side today. We had Sabalenka, Gauff, Osaka all winning through in straight sets. I mean Sabalenka to me again failed to impress. I think she is a player who grows into the tournament, into Grand Slams, and again she had quite a scratchy first set, I would say, against Giacomo, but came through 7-5, 6-2, looking like her old self a little bit more in that second set. Coco Gauff also dispatching the qualifier Maya Sharif 6-3, 6-2. I mean, any thoughts quickly, Chris, on leading contenders? I don't think we've seen them truly tested yet, but I wanted to mention Coco Gauff because she is going to play Potapova next, who defeated Katie
Katie
Boulter.
Boulter, yeah.
Yeah, and Potapova's had a great clay season. She's got a ranking up from just inside the top 100 to around the 30 mark. And their head-to-head is two apiece. And their last match, Potapova actually defeated Gauff on clay in Stuttgart a few seasons ago. So perhaps that's the first big test for Coco Gauff.
It's going to be tough. I watched Coco today, and Maya Sharif is very tricky customer. Lots of high balls, lots of
Mm.
top spins. I think Coco said her arm was almost like hurting after that. That she was such a workout, playing against her, so physical. Very different from Potapova, more of a natural ball striker. And the head-to-head, as you say, is pretty good. I think Potapova won't be intimidated by that moment. I think she's gearing up for another moment on the big stage. I think it will be a question mark as to if Potapova will believe that she's going to get it done. We've seen her be absolutely
Mm.
dismantled by Iga Swiatek. I think it was in a big match on a big show court here at Roland Garros. So hopefully she's matured since then. But I mean, that's not going to be a walk in the park. And I think that's probably going to be a three-set match. And I think
Yeah.
we'll know, what level Coco's at because Maya Sharif was not the test yet, I don't think.
No, it wasn't. I mean, Naomi Osaka's through as well. Chris, very quickly, she did debut in our latest fashion segment for Osaka.
Kim
She
has
did.
always missed the fashion segments. We
I
should
know.
not be let loose
Why are
at
we
this.
talking about it? But she came out in a metallic gold bomber jacket, but more eyebrow raisingly to me, she came out in an ivory train, which sort of looked
Mm.
like she was gearing up for a wedding at Roland Garros
Well,
on the tennis court.
I mean, it's not practical, but practical is a bit out the window
Yeah,
when it
it's like
comes onto
dragging
the.
along the dirt. It's all white.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is
How are
giving,
you getting that
when
out?
brides wear the dress all day and they've been outside, they've had photo shoots outside, it's got all sorts of mud on it. But I think the nature of this is that the clay has been a part of the photo shoots and the creative concept. So I think getting clay on
Right.
it is actually something that
Oh,
maybe
is
they're
that is
looking
that
to
okay?
do because they're reusing materials and, it's very
Oh,
of the
okay.
earth. But I mean, I quite like the bomber. I think Kim would look great in it, to be honest. I
Yeah,
think a
the
bit of
bomber.
sparkle.
I quite like the bomber, and
Again,
I'm
though, it's
glad.
34 degrees. Does anyone need a bomber?
Yeah,
Genuinely.
that's true. That's true. But yeah, I mean, Naomi Osaka moves on. We'll have to see what she conjures up for the next round. I mean, elsewhere, Madison Keys is through.
I was going to say
Uh,
Maria
e-
Sakkari is
Maria
Bakary
Sakkari. Yeah, Sakkari's
battled
Bakkari.
back.
Kalinskaya, Chorlinska, Schneider. Schneider's not dropped a set yet. And I think a player who's looking very, very good is American Eva Jovic. I mean, she dispatched Emma Navarro, who won a lead up tournament to the French Open 6-love, 6-3. So I think she's going to be definitely one to watch. And I was watching a bit of Anna Samova earlier. I mean, 19 minutes on the court, bageled her opponent, Grabner, I think, from Austria, who unfortunately then retired. But again, Anna Samova is probably one just to keep an eye on. Not played a lot of tennis, but I think that's what makes her even more dangerous.
She looked really good when I saw her play in
Mm.
her match. I think she's really, really motivated to get back to winning ways. I think she is. She's got the bit between her teeth. I think she's going to be very, very dangerous. And she looks like she's in great shape and super focused. So I think some of our predictions of her doing well at Wimbledon and US Open
Yes.
could be going well. I'm not
Yeah.
sure this is the slam for her, but it certainly isn't the slam for the Brits, is it, Joel?
No, it's not. All the Brits are now out. I mean, Katie Porter did put up a good fight against Potapova, won that first set, but sadly faded away in sets 2 and 3. So
They like
yeah,
grass more anyway, don't they?
I know, a tournament to forget really for British tennis. We're definitely going to need a strong bounce back from the grass court season. I mean, looking ahead to tomorrow, day 6, and the order of play.
I wonder who's in the opening slot on
Yeah. I
Philippe-Chatrier.
mean, it's just a very familiar sight all round. We've got Iga Swiatek versus Magdalena in the opening slot on Chatrier. We've got Novak Djokovic in the third slot again, not before 3:30 local time against Joao Fonseca.
It's hot.
Sam, that is tough. That is going to be hot. That is going to be big atmosphere, I think. Fonseca always brings a crowd. I think that's going to be a very intriguing matchup. We've also got Andriva Bushkova, Halis Zverev in the night session, presumably with the home hope Frenchman Halis. We'll have to see now how Zverev plays with this favorite tag on him. Is that going to affect his play? We've seen that later on in tournaments. Is it going to affect him earlier on? Let's have a look. But yeah, we've got Tommy Rude. Tommy
Tommy
Rude?
Rude. No,
Tommy.
this is the big. Did you know that Kim doesn't know who Paul Rudd is? She has no
Oh.
idea.
Oh, it's
And this is
the Paul Rudd face off.
this is the Paul Rudd face-off. And I had to explain to her, I was going through his IMDb saying he was an anchorman, he was in Friends, doesn't even watch
Yeah.
Friends, Kim. So I told her to watch this match and watch something from his back catalogue, Joel.
Okay. I mean, what else? Any other matches you're interested in? I mean, Stearns, Bencic, Dumanor, Mensik,
I mean, I'm interested to see
Hodar.
how Mensik can carry on. I'm a bit concerned
Yeah.
about on that front. I think Hodar versus Mickelson will be an interesting one. I think
I
all
mean,
eyes will
Dumanor
be on
didn't even
him.
play last round. Could be more opposite.
I mean, he's the freshest he's ever been. I mean, you couldn't really. I mean, it could be a worse situation there.
Mhm.
But overall, I think the Casper Ruud Tommy Paul match, that's going to be a really good one. And I think Fonseca Djokovic. I do think Djokovic is
Oh.
winning that one.
Predictions? Come on, predictions.
I think he's going to win it in straight sets.
I'm gonna go Djokovic in 4.
Okay,
But
because you
yeah.
were thinking Fonseca before, no? Have you changed your mind?
I
but
think
let's
Fonseca will give. I think he will
give
again
good game. Okay.
he will give good ball, but I think Djokovic is going to now be doubly motivated given Sinner is out, and maybe he's going to try and be a bit more
Yeah.
ruthless with these
Djokovic,
earlier
the
matches.
grandfather of tennis, and his grandchildren he's got to contend with at this point, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Fonseca is going to be pumped as well. I think there's been a lot of criticism, labeled at him, certainly over the last, since the start of the year, not living up to expectation. And what a way it would be to really kind of bring out your best tennis against Novak Djokovic. So yeah, really excited for that one. But we're going to wrap up our Roland Garros Day 5 catch up here.
A
at
roller
Tennis
coaster
Weekly
episode
HQ.
for us,
A
Joel.
roller coaster Garros.
But that's what we'll be calling
Yeah,
it.
well, that's what we call it. Well, yeah, it's definitely a day for a lot of upsets on the men's draw. One that will definitely live long in Tennis Weekly memory. We're going to wrap up, though. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of action from Paris, where we are producing daily episodes across the fortnight. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there. And if you love what you're hearing, be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as well as hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And do follow us on social media. You can see my updates from Paris. We are here for the first week covering it as media. So not long left. So make sure you do follow us and then see all of that. And we'll be out and about in Paris looking at some of the tennis pop-ups too. So plenty of exciting things to look at. And that's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Thread. The handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. And we also have been getting some emails, Joel. So at some point we have to actually address them. They've been talking to us about some of the heat indicators. And Kim and I didn't promise.
Is it not fan suggestions?
The best, probably for you, we need that. But
yeah, we do.
And also, I was going to say, we do need to reveal our collector set. So
we do indeed.
We will do that from tomorrow.
And also, I just need to I completely forgot about this. I'm also going to be at Queen's, so I'm also hoping Serena Williams is going to be there, because that would be great to get the inside
Mr.
scoop. You're getting the inside scoop at the French Open. I need to get the inside scoop at the Queen's. So hopefully,
definitely follow us for that. Then
we will see if Serena Williams returns. But we'll be back on Friday for our Roland Garros Day 6 catch up. It's going to be me and Kim. But until then, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.